Coming up today, Korea opens its 11th Creative Economy Centre in Korea's western Chungcheongnam-do Province. The government hopes the centre will lead innovation in Korea's solar energy sector. Former Japanese Prime Minister Yasuo Fukuda calls on the current leaders of Korea and Japan to hold face-to-face talks to try and work through their issues on history and territory. First, following his nomination for Prime Minister on Thursday, Korea's rival parties prepare for Hwang Gyo-ahn's confirmation hearing. The main opposition party has vowed to scrutinize Hwang's credentials. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Friday, the 22nd of May. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thanks, as always, for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. We start with the grand opening of Korea's 11th Creative Economy Innovation Centre in the western province of Chungcheongnam-do. The government hopes the centre will help foster a strong solar energy industry by spurring innovation in the sector and helping small and mid-sized companies expand into the global market. The $140 million project is the brainchild of the government and Hanwha Q-Cells, which is one of the world's leading photovoltaic companies. As a first step, Hanwha Q-Cells is planning to build a solar plant in Jincheon-gun County, Chungcheongnam-do Province, to help turn the solar energy industry into a growth engine for the economy. Korea plans to open 6 more creative economy centres over the next few weeks, bringing the total to 17 nationwide. President Park Geun-hye met with the top foreign diplomats of Mexico, Indonesia, Turkey and Australia at the presidential office on Thursday ahead of a foreign ministerial meeting. She received the diplomats on the eve of the meeting of the so-called MIKTA group, formed by the 5 middle power countries, including South Korea, in 2013 to expand their influence on the global stage. During the meeting, President Park asked the diplomats for a continued interest and cooperation to help address the issue of North Korea's nuclear weapons programs, among other global issues. She said she hoped that the MIKTA group, which shares core values of democracy and free market economy, will bring tangible results during the meeting, which is scheduled to take place in Seoul on this Friday, and it will be chaired by Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se. South Korea, the United States and Japan will hold talks in Seoul next week to discuss the recent situation in North Korea and its ongoing threats. Seoul's foreign ministry says the 2-day meeting, which starts next Tuesday, will involve its chief nuclear envoy, Hwang Jung-guk, and his US and Japanese counterparts, Sung Kim and Junichi Ihara. The 3 countries will discuss ways to deal with the North Korean nuclear issue through deterrence, pressure and dialogue. The 3 officials serve as delegates to the now suspended 6-party talks on denuclearizing North Korea. Those talks involving the 2 Koreas, the US, China, Japan and Russia, have been stalled since late 2008. Now, South Korea and the United States are not expected to discuss the potential deployment of an American missile defense system, also known as THAAD, to the Korean Peninsula when the leaders of the 2 countries hold a summit in Washington in mid-June. US Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs Daniel Russell laid out Washington's position on Thursday local time, adding that the 2 sides have not even begun governmental-level consultations. Russell also downplayed recent media speculation on the issue after US Secretary of State John Kerry said talks on THAAD were underway during his visit to Seoul earlier this week. Now, Russell made clear that Kerry's remark was misinterpreted as implying that bilateral discussions had begun and stressed that Kerry was only referring to internal discussions within the US government. The defence ministers of South Korea and Japan are expected to sit down for their first one-on-one talks in 4 years next week. And Na Hyung-kyung has this report.
Korean Defense Minister Han Min-gu and his Japanese counterpart Gen Nakatani will most likely meet on May 30th during the 14th Asia Security Summit in Singapore, more commonly known as the Shangri-La Defense Dialogue.
The two will discuss ways to deter North Korea's nuclear missile threats, issues related to the recent revision of the U.S.-Japan Defense Guideline, and how to better cooperate on the military front overall.
The revision to the defense guideline was signed by Washington and Tokyo last month, which opened up the possibility for Tokyo to support the U.S. military in case of war in Korea.
Korea has been very careful for Japanese military or self-defense forces coming to Korea or Korean peninsula for almost any reason. So that there are many issues to talk about between the two countries.
Those topics include detailing when and under what circumstances Seoul will permit aid from Tokyo's military, and also whether or to what extent the two countries will share military information. However, some experts insist the Shinzo Abe cabinet should first show sincerity in mending Seoul-Tokyo ties, which have been strained by Japan's repeated territorial claims to Korea's easternmost Dokdo Island and the issue of Japan's wartime atrocities. Given these tensions, the defense meeting comes at a very critical time, but whether they will achieve a breakthrough remains to be seen. 나현경, Arirang News.
Korea and Japan will try to resolve their current row over Tokyo's bid to enlist its wartime industrial facilities as UNESCO World Heritage Sites. The bilateral meeting, to be held in Tokyo on this Friday afternoon at the request of Korea, will be led by Seoul's Ambassador for Cultural and UNESCO Affairs, Choi Jong-moon, and Tokyo's Director General for Cultural Affairs at the Foreign Affairs Ministry, Jun Shin-mi. It's the first such meeting since Korea voiced objection to Tokyo's push to acknowledge the facilities where a great many Koreans were held captive and forced to work as prestigious UNESCO heritage sites. The Korean government plans to explain its concerns while urging Japan to reflect on the historical facts of forced labor during its colonial rule. Now, while Korea and Japan are tangled in a prolonged historical debate, as we just heard there are increasing calls for the two neighbours to meet and talk it out. Hwang Sang-hee sat down with former Japanese Prime Minister Yasuo Fukuda at the Jeju Forum, who echoed those calls for dialogue.
So let's begin with your assessment of Korea-Japan relations under the Park Geun-hye administration and the Abe administration.
Since the two leaders are from the same generation, I believe that they will get along fine when they meet. That's why I think it's important for them to meet. When they meet, I think they will be able to establish a good relationship.
So what do you think needs to be done from both sides, Korea and Japan, for a breakthrough?
One of the most important things is for the two leaders to meet. And more importantly, they should not hesitate to meet each other. But we cannot expect one meeting to resolve all issues. This is where the public's understanding becomes important.
You served as Prime Minister Abe's envoy to China, and considering that China and Japan have held a couple of rounds of summits while Korea and Japan have yet to meet at the highest level, there are concerns that Korea might be the only one left out of the picture at the end of the day. What's your view?
Regarding that question, didn't the leaders of Japan and China meet last November? And didn't they meet just for the sake of meeting? When it comes to Korea-Japan relations, I am hoping that the two leaders will also meet. I think there is nothing more important than the two of them meeting each other.
What do you think about Prime Minister Abe's use of the word human trafficking when he speaks of the comfort women?
Speaking with the understanding that I am not completely aware of the two countries' thinking, Prime Minister Abe never thought about the comfort woman issue as unimportant. That's the way I understand it.
What are your expectations for the so-called Abe statement that's set to be released in August?
It is unnecessary for an individual to imagine what kinds of expressions will be included. I hope it will contain messages that the neighboring countries can relate to and that they can at least understand under what circumstances this statement is being released.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for your time today.
Very welcome.
Now, the Park administration has tapped Justice Minister Hwang Gyo-ahn to be Korea's next Prime Minister, but he has an important hurdle to clear, a confirmation hearing at the National Assembly. And as you might expect, the main rival parties have different views on how he'll do. Our Park Ji-won reports.
Current Justice Minister Hwang Gyo-ahn is the Park Geun-hye administration's sixth Prime Minister nominee since President Park took office in 2013. Only two previous nominees for the post have actually passed the grueling confirmation hearing process at the National Assembly, so all eyes are now on whether Hwang will be confirmed for the country's second highest office. The ruling Senate party says he will easily pass the test as he already went through the excruciating process when he was appointed Justice Minister 2 years ago.
As Justice Minister, Hwang led the preservation of the nation's constitutional values and legal order.
The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy has vowed to scrutinize the nominee's qualifications for the post. One of the Liberal camp's main concerns is whether Hwang's ideology leans too far to the right and whether he can be politically neutral in the job. Hwang was a prosecutor for some 30 years whose area of expertise was the national security law, which bans support of North Korea and anti-state crimes. As Justice Minister, Hwang led the unprecedented dissolution of the far-left Unified Progressive Party late last year for its pro-North Korean activities.
Hwang's nomination is the administration's outright declaration that state affairs will be based on the terror of the national security law.
Also at issue is his salary while he was working at a law firm after he retired from the prosecutor's office. He was paid nearly $1.4 million for the 17 months he spent at the firm, although the number of cases he dealt during that time is reportedly not many. During his confirmation hearing for the Justice Minister position 2 years ago, Hwang said he'd donate some of that money, but it's not yet clear whether he kept his word. His exemption from his mandatory military service back in 1980 has also raised questions. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Now, looking to make the world more aware of the pain and suffering Japan inflicted on women in the years before and during World War II, Arirang TV invited roughly a dozen journalists from 11 countries to visit the so-called House of Sharing just south of Seoul on Thursday. The residence was built for the Korean survivors of Japan's systematic program of wartime sexual slavery. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
한 달에 군인은 40명 내지 50명 접근하는 거예요. 여러분 보시오. 한 달에 우리 시간이 몇 시간 있는가? 한 달에 시간이 24시간인데 40명, 50명 어떻게 접근합니까? 다 죽고 말지.
Lee Ok-sun was kidnapped by the Japanese when she was just 15 years old. Not long afterward, she was sent to China to serve as a comfort woman for the Japanese Imperial Army in July of 1942. Lee, who is now 89, is one of an estimated 200,000 comfort women from Korea and elsewhere who were forced into sexual slavery by the Japanese military before and during World War II.
There are only 53 comfort women still alive here in Korea, waiting to hear a sincere apology from the Japanese government.
Korea continues to demand a clear apology from Japan for its complicity in the sexual slavery issue, but Tokyo has so far refused. In an effort to raise awareness about the comfort woman issue around the world, Arirang TV has invited 11 journalists from as many countries to Korea this week to learn about the issue firsthand and hopefully share their experiences back in their home countries.
Japan should be teaching this history in its schools and textbooks. I believe that Japan should build a monument to the memory of the so-called comfort women and the suffering of sex slaves around the world on the grounds of the Imperial Palace in Tokyo. And it's only by stepping forward in meaningful ways that feel personal and emotional and heartfelt that Japan can begin to take additional steps to put this very painful history to rest.
The former comfort women in Korea say they will do everything possible to get Tokyo to deliver a sincere apology. And they urge Koreans to carry on the baton after they are gone.
당기도 이제 해방된 데가 몇 해가 몇십 년이 됐는가 하는 거지. 이렇게 할머니들 다 죽지를 기다리는데 안 된다. 죽어도 이 문제를 꼭 해명해야 돼.
김현빈, Arirang News.
Now, Ireland will hold a historic vote on Friday on whether to change its constitution to allow same-sex marriage. If the referendum is passed, Ireland, a predominantly Catholic country, will become the first nation in the world to approve gay marriage through a popular vote. In other countries, same-sex marriage was made legal through legislation or a judicial decision. Now, opinion polls show the majority support changing the law, but opposition to the constitutional change has been organised by Catholic groups. Irish Prime Minister Enda Kenny said last week that he's confident in a yes vote, but admitted the race will be close. The results will be announced on Saturday. Well, that's all we have for now. I'm Mark Broome. Have a wonderful weekend, and thank you as always for watching, and we do hope to see you at the same time on Monday. Until then, goodbye.